In general, there are three different kinds of errors that can occur to you while writing a program, and we're going to go through each one in sequence. So let's start with the most basic type of error. We call this the syntax error. So a syntax error is a misuse of the Python language, or a misuse of whatever programming language you're working with. So we're going to write an example here. Let's say name is equal to Craig, and print name. All right, so what's the problem on this line? Well, we forgot the delimiter at the end of the line where we're declaring the variable name, and if we attempt to run this, we're going to get this angry little message that says EOL while scanning string literal. Literally, Python is saying, I found the end of line when looking at this string literal, and I couldn't find your ending delimiter, and I don't know what's going on here. So with a syntax error, you're misusing the language, and they're usually the easiest errors to fix, because in Python, we can't even run the program with the syntax error. You won't even be able to see any output until you correct your syntax errors. Let me show you one other type of syntax error. This one's a little harder, but not really. Let's say name is equal to Craig. This one's going to be fine. And then I'm going to print out hello there, name. And on the next line, I'm going to do answer is equal to 5 plus 2. Okay, so we could see here that I'm forgetting the parentheses on the line, the closing parentheses at the end of this print statement right here. But let's say you forgot those parentheses. And in fact, Python's not even letting me forget it. It's putting up this little tooltip to tell me exactly what statement I'm currently working on. But we're going to run this anyway. And you're going to see here that it's going to say there's an invalid syntax error on that line. And it highlights the word answer. But if you notice here, there's actually no problem on that line. The problem is actually on the line before it. So when you get a syntax error, you want to look at the line that's highlighted, and you also want to look at the line directly before it to see if you forgot something on that line too. So I'm going to put the parenthesis there, and now everybody's happy. Now we don't have a syntax error, and if we run this program, it's going to run perfectly fine. So a syntax error, easiest one to find. It's a misuse of the language, and you can't even run the program if you have a syntax error. You have to fix it before you continue. Okay, so let's talk about the next one. Let's talk about a runtime error. So a runtime error is an error that occurs during the running of your program. Your program does run, but at some point it crashes. It stops running. And that's usually because you did something that's invalid in the language. So let's give you an example here. X is equal to 5 and Y is equal to 0, and print out answer, X divided by Y. So if you remember from math class, you're not allowed to divide anything by 0. If you divide something by 0, you're going to get an invalid result. And if we attempt to run this thing, let's print out welcome to my program, and then print out the answer. You're going to see here that we get the result, welcome to my program, but then we get this angry little red message here that says traceback, most recent call, and it gives you all sorts of information. It gives you the line that caused this error, and then it says 0 division error, division by 0. It gives you a little bit of a description here. This is what we call an exception. So this exception was raised at this particular line in our program when we attempted to divide something by 0. Note that the program did begin running successfully, but then it crashed at some point. This would be considered a runtime error. So you'd want to avoid runtime errors if possible. In this case, we wouldn't want to divide a number by 0 because that would cause a problem. Let me show you another. This is a very common runtime error at this point in the semester too. What if we tried this? We're going to say number of items is equal to float of input of how many items do you want to buy. So ask the user for how many items they want to buy and store the result in this variable called number of items and convert it to a floating point value right away. And then print out thanks. I will buy number of items. So if we run this program all by itself, how many items do you want to buy? I want to buy 50. Thanks, I will buy 50. Not a problem. However, what if I ran this program like this? How many items do you want to buy? None. Well, we really can't enter the word none, because if we enter the word none, we're going to attempt to convert it to a floating point value, and you can't do that with the string NONE. We're going to get an exception at this point. So don't worry so much about that sort of runtime exception. At this point in the semester, we're going to show you how to deal with that later on in the semester. But for now, know that a runtime error is an error that happens during the running of your program, and you always get a traceback that gets generated that tells you exactly where the error occurred and what type of error was encountered when that thing happened. All right, so let's talk about the third type of error. The third type of error is called a logic error, and these are the hardest ones to find. So I'm going to do a real simple one right here. We're going to say num1 is equal to int of input of num1, ask the user for a number and convert it to an integer. Num2 is int of input of num2. Great. And now we want to go ahead and we want to compute the answer. And the answer is going to be num1 times num2. And then we want to print out the sum is, comma, answer. So let's give this program a try and see what happens. So I want num1 is going to be the number 5, num2 is going to be the number 10, and the sum is 50. Well, that is clearly a wrong answer, but you'll notice here that the program didn't crash, and we were able to run it, so we don't have a syntax error, we don't have a runtime error. What we have here is called a logic error. And a logic error means that your program ran fine, it didn't crash, it just didn't do what you wanted it to do. So you miswrote your code in such a way that it doesn't solve the problem you're setting out to solve. And as you can imagine, these are the hardest errors to find because they involve the nuances of the language and the particular problem that you're attempting to solve. So 3 types of errors: syntax errors, you can't even run the program, you misuse the language. Runtime error, the program crashes at some point, and it's usually due to some sort of input that's invalid. And logic error, the program runs, doesn't crash, it just doesn't do what you want it to do.